Are you ladies going to talk all night, or we're going to have this wonderful presentation? It's 7 o'clock.
Ding, 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 ding.
Public hearing.
So we're really doing it just for the 3 members of the board?
Yes.
Excuse me, there's
I
5 of
guess.
us.
There's a couple youngsters in the back there that are probably fascinated.
Dying to ask questions. What time is it?
So we will call the
Take
meeting
turns
to
here.
order and open up the public hearing on Chapter 64. Representing Chapter 64 is,
Well, for the recorded audience, I'm Kathleen Foley, I'm the vice chair of the HDRB, and members Andrea Connor and Carolyn Bashan are here, and others will join us soon, we hope.
do you want to turn that one light off, or can we turn
Sure.
one off a little?
Outside.
Right around the, right now, you go through to the hallway. Oh, that's much better.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Oh, too
Well, that's much, much better, but that's okay. I don't know.
So, why update chapter 64? Well, this
I
portion.
have a question. Why update Chapter 64?
I got an answer. Our
Okay.
chairman has joined us, Al Zgolinski.
Wow.
Watch out, Al, make room for the public. So why update the ordinance? The ordinance was first adopted in 1976. There have been no comprehensive updates since. There have been piecemeal updates as issues presented themselves. And we've had feedback over those years, and especially mostly in recent years, that the ordinance is hard to understand and our process isn't clear in the ordinance. Also, and our last board member has joined us. Hi guys. Sean Conway. Through the review of a number of applications in recent years, the deficiencies in the ordinance have presented themselves, and those were deficiencies that impacted both applicants and the village. So the time had come. And finally, the comprehensive plan, as Marie well knows, calls for an improved HDRB process. It calls for the making of land use laws overall more consistent and more accessible, and particularly making our process improved.
Then also, the thing you have to keep in mind is that the ordinance was passed in '76. Since then, there has been a lot of,
I'm getting there.
okay. Never mind.
So what were the project goals? The project goals were to align more closely with the New York State Model Preservation Ordinance, which was written in 2014, to reflect the evolution of preservation law since 1976. That's a long time for laws to change and us to stay the same. To make the ordinance more user-friendly, understandable, and accessible, and to provide reliable and fair protections for historic resources and for property owners. So, how did we accomplish the update? Well, we've spent a lot of time as a board. First, we wrote a grant to the State Historic Preservation Office, the Certified Local Government Unit. We applied for a matching grant for funds to undertake the process. We won that grant, and then we hired a consulting attorney named Bill Hurst. Bill Hurst. Bill Hurst is the co-author of the New York State Model Preservation Ordinance, so we were in good hands and had someone who understood well the shifts that we needed to make. Then, that was a matching grant, so the village had to put forward the equivalent of value for the grant, and that came in the form of literally hundreds of hours of volunteer time over the last 2.5 years by board members. And that was doing research, sort of combing through best practices, combing through the model ordinance, and bringing it all together. So, speaking specifically about the resources we used, we looked first at the existing ordinance to see what worked well and what should be retained and what should be what could be updated. I did look at the New York State Model Preservation Ordinance. We also turned to guidance documents that are produced by the Secretary of the Interior and the State Historic Preservation Office. We made topic-specific consultations with the village attorney. We tried very hard to make this a cost-effective process, so we pulled him in when we needed specific guidance on areas. And then we also looked, especially Carolyn did, where we felt we needed to look at best practices around the state. We did a lot of research on ordinances across the state to see what could be brought in and used in the village. So, what's the result? The result is overall improved usability for the ordinance. Now, the ordinance is presented in roughly the order that an applicant experiences our process. So the old ordinance was sort of all over the place in terms of topic, and it was hard for folks to understand where to start by looking at the ordinance. And I'll go over in a moment the table of contents so you can see how they compared. The submission requirements were made more specific, and determination criteria were also made more specific, which means that the applicants can now be more aware of what's expected of them and what they can expect of us. So it's sort of a dual responsibility. This is what you need to bring and what we need to deliver. Also, sign rules were consolidated into a single section. So basically what we've done, it's not very clear. Let's see if we can focus it a little bit. It's tiny, so it's hard to see. So this is the current table of contents, and this is the proposed table of contents in the revision. It's basically taken the items that are here, organized them in the way in which one experiences the process, and then stretched it out so it's easier for folks to find specific topics. I'm just going to grab my notes to be able to show you places where that's quite evident. So the large categories are the same. Where we have introductions of more clarifying topic areas are things like the power and duties of the board, the cooperation of village departments, ordinary maintenance and repair requirements, those were buried before. Public notice requirements are now more clear, so that everyone knows what deadlines are and when they need to make them to be on agendas, etc. Very important is the public hearing requirement and procedures. One of the goals of the New York State model, well, there are a number of goals of the model preservation ordinance, but that model ordinance details procedural steps for local landmarking decisions and reviewing alterations to historic properties, and it increases the standard of conduct for municipal reviews and for public participation. And then, as Al said, it also incorporates the evolution of preservation law over that time. So what that means for everyone is that there is more reliable and fair protections for the community's historic resources and for property owners. And it raises, this is the key, I think, for all of us, it raises the bar for objectivity in the review of the board. And so that the criteria for our decisions is more clear and apparent to the public. The other reason that following the model code is important is that we are a certified local government under the State Historic Preservation Office. Updating to something closer to the model ordinance keeps us in compliance with requirements for the Certified Local Government Office, and that means we also remain eligible for grants. So as the SHPO has reviewed this already, they know we are in process, and because they knew we were in process with our ordinance, we were able to secure a second grant to update the design standards, and that's what we're working on now. And we hope to be able to apply for additional grants going forward to make preservation more accessible to the public. We've got a lot of resources here in Village Hall that the public never gets to, right? We've got a survey that was done in 2009 with another grant that needs to be made available to the public more completely. We've also got a collection of applications from over almost 40 years that have images of buildings as they've evolved, application changes as they've been done to buildings, and that history ought to be accessible in a more easy way to the public. So when they're planning their projects, they can come in and say, I'd like to review this. Right now they have to come in and say, I'd like to review this paper file, and Jeff goes to the basement. But sort of the dream is that someday all of that information will be able to be accessible electronically. That's a big project, and we're going to need CLG funds for that. So, meeting the CLG's requirements is very important for all of us from a funding perspective as well. So, the outcome is improved protections for applicants and for the village, clearer term definitions so everybody's on the same page, we know what we're talking about together, clarification and tightening of deadlines so that the process can be quicker, incorporation of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which, as you know, has been incredibly helpful for recent really tough decisions that had to be made about demolitions. That was a great sort of intellectual and criterion framework for us to use in making those decisions, and I think we made better decisions having gone through that process. The fees and escrow have been instituted, and the reason that's important is that previously the village picked up all the cost of board we're not paid obviously, but the clerk is paid, the board secretary is paid, you pay to videotape, etc. And so all of the taxpayers were paying for the service of a particular applicant's project. And so now the person receiving the service helps to bear the cost and not just the tax base in general. We have an articulated process for hardship claims now that did not exist in the previous ordinance. And also an articulated appeal, the hardship did exist, the articulated process for hardship claims. What did not exist was an articulated appeal process. So that brings us into compliance with the model code. And that's everything from me.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Sure.
Thank you.
And questions from the public are addressed to you, yeah.
Do we have anything from the board? We have anything from the public? Kids in the back?
We're not public.
Public?
Remember?
Anything else from you guys?
We get to cover everything?
I believe, and I looked, that this whole draft is up on the website.
Yes.
So, it's up on the website under the HDRB section. So if anyone needs to get to that, we should make that known, so hopefully the press will make that known, that it's a clear link on your website, on the village website in the HDRB section. So for anyone who wants to look this over, it is there, it's been there, I guess. You guys have done a phenomenal job.
Thank you. There's also a hard copy. Jeff has a hard copy too, if anyone.
Hard copy is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through everything, I don't know how many months ago, whenever we first got it, and had no problem, so thank you for all the work, I think it's great.
We're glad to be done.
Yeah, I bet.
And now you're talking about another project.
Yes, we are well into the design standards project.
So I think we keep,
You ready to go?
what's that?
You ready to make the resolution?
We can, or do you wanna leave it open for a while, or till 7:30? I don't know, that's always the question, is if it's a public hearing.
We could leave it open.
I think we'll leave it open and vote in the end, usually, like, we haven't really come up with a process on when we should close it. You know, like when we're advertising, we have a public hearing and we don't really have like, an hour or two, and we don't know exactly how many people might come and what we might encounter, so, we usually keep it open for the meeting and then do it at the end.
Could you review the process of the demolition of the building again for me? Because I can read and everything, but I like things explained to me better by actual words.
Typically, if it's a building of any kind of consequence, then it's classified as a type 1 secret action, which involves.
Consequence meaning what exactly?
Well, secret has two types and
Three types.
three types, right? Type 1 means that they have to fill out for the full environmental assessment form. Type 2, there is no action. Type 3 is, or not type 3,
It's
it's
unlisted.
unlisted.
Unlisted actions are those that are not specifically enumerated in the law or in the DEC regulations, the Department of Environmental Conservation regulations, and they're kind of iffy, and they're maybe type 1. They're likely to be type 1, but they have to go through a process too to determine really whether they will be a type 1 or type 2. Most unlisteds end up in type 1.
So if a project like a demolition were proposed in the nationally listed area of the historic district or substantially contiguous to the nationally listed area of the historic district, it would automatically be a type 1, which would
Main
trigger,
Street, for example.
for example, yep, or 35 Market is in the, or substantially contiguous to the
So-
national district.
The process that occurs then is that the applicant needs to identify specifically what they want to do. Then they have to develop mitigation, options for mitigations. You know, what are the things, instead of demolition, what could they have done? Basically, they then have to analyze those things and present it to the board in order to justify the fact that they are going to demolish a building in the district. So that's the when it comes to historic preservation, that's the principal process. And we also send things up to SHPO, they take a look at it, and so on.
And it's a two-path process which runs in parallel. While we're looking at the environmental process, we're also looking at the evolution of the design they're presenting. Typically, if they were to request a demolition without any replacement, it would probably be rejected fairly summarily.
We would have to reject it as a CLG government,
That's right. And
unless it was an
consequently,
economic hardship application.
consequently, an applicant might go to an economic hardship application, or they might revise their plan. So in the evolution of the design process, what we've done to kind of forestall or prevent a lot of projects, not just demolitions, but projects in general, from going to an economic hardship process, is we workshop them extensively. And in that process, we develop the design along with the applicant, and as that design develops, sometimes some portions of that long-form environmental assessment might change slightly, and so and the environmental assessment, long form is a 3-step process. It's a part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1 is filled out by the applicant. The HDRB has to accept it or comment on it. They have to revise that, and that process goes into the part 2 process, which is prepared by the HDRB. In the 3 type 1 cases we've had so far, we have hired consultants to advise us on that. And then there's the type 3, which is the response again that fills in all the blanks and all the holes. That's prepared by the applicant. And at that point, we decide whether or not we will hold a public hearing on the state environmental quality review part of the process and on the actual application for a certificate of appropriateness. And typically, if it's a demolition, or if it's a substantial modification to a building, a substantial alteration, or a fairly substantial addition, we will also have an HDRB hearing, which can be held at the same time.
And of course, we're talking a lot about process and parts and seeker, but what is essential here is the weighing of criteria under the ordinance, right? Every application is going to be different depending on the condition of the structure, the significance of the structure, the degree to which it's been modified already. And so all of those elements get put on the table and weighed to determine, so for example, 126 Main was a building that, or is a building, it's still standing, is a building that had a great deal of significance, its historical significance, but not a great deal of historical integrity. And for us, the tipping, there was a tipping point at which the integrity of the structure, the lack of integrity in the structure outweighed what remained in terms of its significance. And so the determination was to document the structure, to salvage whatever could be salvaged, and then work with the applicant on the redesign of the building.
See, and that opinion was not only us, but was also the architectural historian consultant
Right.
that we hired, as well as SHPO. So,
Now, when you say integrity, do you mean parts that were original that were still available to be seen or known that they're even there, or do you mean structural integrity, like which?
well, but that's just it.
Aspect.
Realistically, the only historical portion that remained was the framing on the inside, which was badly chopped up.
So that's the integrity you're referring to.
Right, and it
Well,
was
also-
not
also
visible
the
to the
des-
public.
Also the design integrity. If a building has been, so modified over time that it no longer sort of bears a resemblance to the original building, if it's been so cut up, if it's had so many changes in where the windows were placed or where the doorways were placed, or there were a lot of subsequent additions that,
Connection to the building next door and all.
yeah, things like that. But quite frankly, the majority of the applications that come into us are not type 1 applications. It's quite unusual that in the last year and a half, is it? We've had 3 type 1 applications, and since we've actually been deemed to be subject to secret, which some previous village attorneys did not agree with, almost all of our applications are type 2s, which require no further environmental review. If you're simply changing out your windows, if you're
Installing a fence.
installing a fence,
The workaday stuff that is sort of the vast majority of what we do.
you know,
The-
And additions as well.
And additions.
well, small additions.
So,
Yeah.
so Steve, one of the
Good thing.
things that has brought us to a point where we did have a large number of, I mean, what is for us, for the village, a large number of type 1s is that we have an historic district that's almost 40 years old, right? The buildings have been under regulation under Chapter 64 for quite a long time. And many of the buildings in the district, most of the buildings in the district have received some degree of attention and maintenance under the requirements of that ordinance. We are lucky enough to be in a place, a community and a municipality where people still want to buy, still want to invest. There isn't a lot of real estate availability. So we're coming to the structures that have been neglected, that have not been maintained, and we're going to have these questions. All the low-hanging fruit has been addressed, and now we're down to the buildings that are sort of in the worst shape. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that any application for demolition is going to be approved because 126 was approved or 35 Market was approved, because every case is considered on its merits.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking me through that. I just find it, I don't know what the correct word is, but we review as a board, someone wants to put a sign in front of their building, they go to you, it goes to zoning. We have rules, there's certain sizes we have to stick to. So that's just a sign and it comes before us,
You as trustees, you mean?
yes, our board, when I say us, I'm sorry. And like what Ryan wants to do to his stoop, he wants to put a new step on the village sidewalk, and he's coming to us, and we have to determine that. It just seems odd that, that you could take a building down on Main Street, and we don't really have any oversight or
Well, that's
or
because
input on
that's
it.
how New York state law works, right? Our board, the planning board, the zoning board are quasi-judicial boards.
But you guys are granting
Steve?
the permission for them to do it.
So the way the law works
Okay,
is that if someone, either an applicant or a member of the public, is dissatisfied with the decision of a quasi-judicial board, there is an appeal process called an Article 78 proceeding.
right,
And that says, I believe, I, the applicant, I, a member of the public, believe that the decision made by this quasi-judicial board was arbitrary and capricious, not based on the merits of the case.
okay,
And I would like a judge to review the case. And the judge reviews the case and determines either we go back and look at it again or upholds it. There's a reason that the appeals process is structured that way. Because your trustees, elected officials, have limited terms, A. B, you are, you can, this is, I'm not saying that you are being lobbied, but you are subject to public
So is your
lobbying in
board
the
as
way
well.
that a quasi-judicial board is prohibited from doing, right? We can't meet with an applicant in private session to have a conversation with them. We're required to meet with them in public and with a quorum.
right.
So the appeals process goes not to you, who could be subject to political pressure, but it goes to a judge at the state level. And that's how it should be to protect the integrity of that process and insulate it from political influence.
Okay.
The other
I'd
thi-
like to bring up one other thing, speaking of state judges, the whole signage business. A lot of the signage applications we get, we don't look at content, we don't look at color. The zoning regulations say how many square feet they can
Right.
have or how much coverage it can have. And yet we have a rather strict process by which we have to judge on any application for signage, technically within 3 business days of receipt of the application, of a complete application. And this all stems from a lawsuit many years ago, and since we've been, a good village ever since, we're wondering if it isn't possible to approach the court and ask them to give us some relief on this.
That was one of the recommendations we made with the submission of the application, of the draft.
But the one other thing, Steve, that I think needs to be pointed out is that there are structures in the village which are in such poor shape that it really doesn't make sense to be rebuilt. And the question really is that what is the historic importance that would justify insisting that an applicant, a homeowner, or a building owner, to spend a large amount of money to rebuild something that really, by the time they're finished with it, it would look new, but there's really nothing historic there. So, these are the issues that we deal with. I mean, it becomes a question of, if you rebuild something, are you saving the historic fabric? Not really. You're putting in
It
new.
depends how much you're rebuilding, obviously.
Exactly, and so there's a judgment that needs to be made there, and you can't say that, there's no building that can be demolished. We have to look at each building on a case-by-case basis. And like I said, we've got SHPO, we've got the consultant who hires a historic preservation architect who also reviews it. So it's not an arbitrary and capricious decision that we make, and it's not our inclination to, this process that we put people through on the type 1 secret actions is long and expensive.
I've been involved with it, it's not a lot of fun, and it is expensive
Well,
for the
it's
client
worth-
as well.
it's
But
worth
to
noting-
protect old buildings, so it's important. But if a building is significant just because it's old, I think that's important. If a building's significant because George Washington stayed there, that's a different thing altogether, and that, enters a different realm. But the fact that something is built prior to 1800 or 1820 or whatever, and it's still standing, and it needs some work, and I think that that's a valuable building, all by itself, whether you have to fix a bunch of stuff in it or not. I think the fact that it remains, when not many places, these buildings exist anymore. So I think it's worth having to spend the extra money and to fix these things up and require that it's done. So I don't agree with everything you're saying. I agree with you guys for what you're doing, and I think it's great, and the work you've done here is terrific, but I have issue with saying something, if you have to replace 90% of a building, it's not an old building anymore. If you preserve the facade completely and you rebuild behind it, that's interesting, and I've seen that done, but that's just that has to be done in some locations because of the importance of the building. They're just not gonna tear the face down, and whoever buys the thing has to fix it. That's just how it is. It's that kind of a building, so.
Well, actually, to address one of the points you made, either if George Washington slept there, or if the building is, say, for example, unique in its style, or it was associated with some historic event that, George Washington, or somebody did
Washington
some-
Irving.
the Washington Irving, somebody like that, wrote a poem there or something, or it was, designed by a noted architect or engineer or something like that. Those are the criteria by which a landmark is determined, or the inclusion in the district is determined, but it's also the determination of significance. So, obviously, a building that might be fairly nondescript building, but say somebody invented some really amazing thing there, that building might be landmarked, not because of its architecture, but because of an event, a signing of some famous law or something like that, or some famous murder or something.
Well, that's a different value than the fact that it was just built by people 200 years ago or whatever.
So it's important to remember that our entire process for certificates of appropriateness, the seeker review process, is a public process. And public comment periods are accommodated all throughout both of them. And so if there are concerns about structures and wishes or hopes for their retention or their removal, the public is afforded the opportunity to come and make those known. I can assure you, we had very few members of the public attend any of our sessions, and we had no trustees attend any of those sessions. So had that process been experienced, I mean, certainly the public record is available for anyone to review, but I think you'll find that the what we are required to go through under seeker and under our certificate of appropriateness requires huge amounts of information gathering and criteria balancing, and the record reflects the careful determination. And when an opportunity is afforded for folks to comment, folks need to comment if there are concerns.
And there's lots of opportunity
And
for
there's
that.
plenty
It's
of-
not just the public hearing. Our workshops are open to the public.
Well, I did attend a couple, actually. I guess you didn't see me in the background there. So I was a trustee that was there. You were probably absent.
I probably was, I'm glad you were
Because you missed a lot of
there.
meetings, from what I understand.
We have a nice stack of information, letters and correspondence and drawings on all of these applications if you want to spend the time looking at them. So,
Reading the EAF.
I have to
Video
video
work.
tapes
And
of all the
videotapes.
meetings.
Videos.
I wish I had watched.
Sorry to bust your chops so hard, but I'm serious about this stuff, and I've seen some things happen in Boston when I lived there that were definitely not right, and you guys are doing the right thing, but I'm concerned. Why not talk about the oversight of the board? I'm just talking about, well, what happens if the people in the historical board are not doing the right thing? And then we're not really paying attention because we're busy fixing the potholes or whatever.
That's always a risk, and that's
So-
why it was a priority for us. It was a priority for me from the time I came on this board almost 10 years ago now, to make sure that our ordinance was tight, so that not only the village was protected, but also that property owners were protected as they should be. And you could not say that you couldn't say that those protections were afforded to the village and to property owners under the current ordinance. Under the
I understand
proposed
that.
ordinance, we can say that with a greater degree of confidence.
And I agree, and it's great. But I was just looking for one more thing, so.
Okay.
Wait, one more thing, I'm just kidding.
I know Steve, you know, in the line of work he's in and I'm in, is passionate about older places, so I hear where he's coming from and having a building taken down, and what I know and what I think Steve knows, it sounded like, I don't know, there might have been a chance to save, or maybe it wasn't that much work, and maybe we're not looking at the whole picture, but, you know, what it takes to actually fix a place.
It's troubling, you know, none of us wanna see something taken down on Main Street.
Okay, thank you for your explanation. We have, next, the approval of final list of fireman service awards. This is pretty much in,
On the list, there are some people who are dead by year-end 2017. Should they be on the list?
I doubt it.
Specifically Charlie Hustis. Oh, I'm sorry.
What do they
No,
have?
no, no, that's the
Some of them.
Charlie
Yes,
Hustis.
Charles.
Set up in the Charlie Hustis.
Chucky.
I'm not sure which Joetta that is. Whether that's.
But he,
Joe
but this
or
is, if this is for January through December of 2017, Joanna
Right.
was still alive sometime in that period. So he,
So, the fact that he was dead on December 31st, he stays on the list.
I would say, because it's a date range from the first to the
He
second,
only has 1 point, so I
it's a
don't
date
think.
range from January to December.
Al has a
Oh,
question.
Yeah, just a quick question, what is the process now as far as the ordinance goes? Huh?
You're voting later this evening.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just extending the public hearing because we don't really have a time set, and we advertise for the public hearing, but not really a beginning and end time, what we have to do in the future.
You
Okay,
intend to do it tonight, you intend to close it?
Yeah, we're gonna close it tonight, we'll vote on it tonight.
okay.
We'll close on the public hearing, close the public hearing, vote on it, yes.
Okay, so if they
We
were
can, we'll
alive,
do that at 8 o'clock.
if they were alive at any time in that period, they stay on
I
the list.
would say they should stay on this,
I think they went through this like, and actually last year with it, and took
They did
a
last.
number of people off of it, so I'd imagine they did a
I think
very
Michelle.
thorough job this time.
Yeah, I think Michelle, I think
It's gotten smaller.
Got a lot smaller. I think
They,
did
it got a
very
lot
well.
smaller last year.
Yeah.
It got a lot
Yes.
smaller than last year.
Yeah, right, yes.
So, do you wanna make a motion? to
Yes.
approve it?
Yeah,
I'll make a motion to accept the final listing for the Fireman Service Award.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is authorize mayor to sign the MOA with Cold Spring Fire Benevolent Association.
Police.
Police
Police.
benevolent.
Police, what did I say?
Fire.
Oh, fire,
Fire on the
sorry.
The fire on the brain.
Cold Spring Police Benevolent Association, sorry.
Dave, in item number 3, in the third whereas, the PBA shall hold a ratification
Saw
vote no
that.
later than, I'm not sure they did that.
I don't know if they did or
today.
not. Well, we had sent, I guess they had, he came in and they had signed it, and I had signed it, so I think, yes, they did that yesterday. And I guess that was the ratification of it.
Okay,
It is initial down here, so I assume.
What's that?
It's initial down there, is that
yeah.
way down the bottom?
Yeah. And he dropped off yesterday, the document,
Dropping off the document.
a signed document.
And does that imply that they held the vote? That's the
I
question.
think it was.
Okay,
Anything
So-
else?
yeah, so if you go to the last page, sorry, if you go to page 3, there's date of ratification of the MOA. Is that the PBA ratification date? In which case, should it be filled in as April 30th? And then the same is true on page 4, effective under 6.3, date of ratification of the MOA. And then the same is true on page 6, under 7.4, date of ratification, 3 times, date of ratification, date of ratification.
Should that be the date of approval by the board? Or is it-
That's just it. The date of ratification of the MOA, is it the ratification by the PBA or the approval by, or the authorization by the DOT for the mayor to sign? I don't know the answer to that. We can follow up with Judith and Pam tomorrow.
Okay.
Can we just, can we just make this a date of this agreement, which is June 1st? Why is it the date of ratification? This agreement is from June 1st through May 31st of 2020.
No, that's correct.
Yes, but why are all these blanks referring to the
Because
date of
it's-
ratification rather than the date?
The date of ratification and the date of and the contract period dates are independent of one another.
Right, I understand that.
Okay, so the
So these changes,
the second sections which reflect a date, here stated as the date of ratification of the MOA. The question is, what represents ratification of the MOA?
okay, but my question separately is, why is it connected to the ratification and not the contract date? These are changes to the contract.
Where is that, Fran?
I mean,
I'm
what
not
I'm
following.
reading here, in the event an employee is assigned to work on a tour cannot report for any reason, he shall contact the OIC. Why is that effective the date, today or yesterday, depending on what we're looking at, instead of June 1st?
Because it's when it goes into effect.
But it goes into effect June 1st.
No, it went into effect June 1st last year.
Oh, I'm sorry,
The
okay,
period,
gotcha.
right, right.
Okay,
So,
sorry, it's June 1st of last year.
so
So it goes into effect.
then the ratification date is
Gotcha.
yesterday or
Or today.
today.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Okay, sorry about that.
We're in agreement. So, we'll follow up with Pam and Judith tomorrow on the ratification date.
Okay.
And, sorry, right, the ratification date in pages 3, 5, and 6,
Okay, so we can pass
conditionally.
conditionally, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you can make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the MOA conditioned on the correct,
Ratification date.
the PBA ratification date on page 1, and the ratification dates on pages 3, 4, and 6.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, correspondence, 4 Stone Tree requests to add a step to current stoop. Step will be on village property. There's way too much information. Or no, it's actually,
He's right here if you wanna talk to him.
I actually have more information.
it's very, very clear on here what's needed. I stopped by today, or took a look at it. I think Marie, you went by also. It's a narrow, the walkway runs down, I guess parallel to the street, as you can see in the photo. We need to add a step on the bottom, I believe, because of the risers will be moved up. So it's a small area, it's not impeding or on the sidewalk itself. So, any other?
Well, the step itself is not conforming to the rise and run that's required.
Right.
So
Right now.
you can't have a 2-inch, no, if you add this, you'll have a 8-inch step, and then you'll have a 2-inch riser, then you'll go the rest of the way up. So they're not probably gonna allow that, you'll have to come up with something
Yeah,
different.
we're the step height now is 9 inches, and we're adding another,
1.5 inches.
actually, I think almost 3 inches.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at your drawing. you know, you got like a 8-inch new step, and then the one after that is only a couple inches above it, the way you drew it, I don't know.
Right.
Right.
They won't let that fly.
Yeah, I think the drawing is not to scale.
Yeah,
Well, it's so good though, Ryan. I thought-
we have a solution to make the riser deep.
Okay, that's all I noticed.
Yeah.
I didn't want you to go through all this and not have a plan.
About this, and then we insisted that they work out exactly how everything works out.
But this has to be accepted by the building inspector,
Correct.
yes.
That's
So
that's
wh-
my point.
So what we're voting on is basically allowing to use this small section for that last step if it's in compliance with code and,
If it is
Other
in
review.
compliance, right.
So you're,
Two
Yeah.
comments, the current railing ends at the current first step from the sidewalk. If another step is appended to that, it seems to me, for purposes of safety and visibility, that the railing should be extended to the new first step so that people get a visual clue. I don't wanna go closer to the structure because there's a railing in my way, as opposed to, oh my God, I'm falling over the step. So can we make that?
Yeah,
I don't know whether or not the building inspector will require.
We're gonna have to replace the railing and it will extend, to that additional step.
Okay.
The challenge is we're working through, what the design of that new railing is gonna look like.
I think that's very important
Yeah.
for public safety.
But, you know,
Yeah.
there's another,
The second is that
they're gonna knock
it
that off.
is
put another trim on
using village sidewalk, a portion of the village sidewalk. It is not a usable portion of the village sidewalk. It's only, can be used right now to go up to your house. Can we, as we've done in other cases, can we make it contingent upon the sale of a 14-inch by 3-foot section to the applicant?
why don't we?
I'm against that
Why don't
because
we
I'm
make
not
it-
gonna admit the cost that would be incurred to have this surveyed or to have that go
If that
through
were
is.
the case, I would say they should buy the whole piece where the steps are. Instead of just buying, I
Gotcha.
assume that
I
the
see what
steps
you're
are all on the village property, right?
Yeah.
I would say 70% of them are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
look at the
would
sidewalk
make
here.
it contingent on
Right, I see what
buying
you're
the
saying,
whole
Fran.
piece.
You know.
I mean, I would be fine with purchasing, if it was for sale, I would be interested in purchasing it, but if, we do wanna move on this project. And we've been kind of going through it for a couple months now, so.
So Dave's opinion is that the cost.
Well,
overhead
no,
of
well,
doing-
the other opinion, well, this has altered mine
Oh, okay.
since the step or stoop is on public property. I think we should sell that then. I mean, we did that. We did, for James, we had him purchase it, so he was, you know, legal, so, I would,
Well, it would make it official
yeah.
more so.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to hold up his project.
Yeah, no, I don't think
We
it will
could
hold
get
it up.
done- We can get it done relatively quickly if you have the meets and bounds, if you have some drawings for us. It's not a large process to get it done.
We can move it ahead, you can move it ahead, but I think we will, you know, have a contingent on the sale of the property, which will be, we can measure it up and see, it's $4 a square foot.
Is that something that I would need to have surveyed at my own cost?
Yes.
Okay.
You have a survey when you bought the house? Well, no, this is what it
I don't think so, I mean, I just have what was here on the title.
Sorry,
So
Meredith?
just to be clear, are we talking about just in front of the steps, just
No,
this
no.
little,
All the steps,
No, well, the whole thing.
the whole thing.
the whole thing, cause the whole thing's on village property is what we're talking about. Okay, cause we were only talking about like
I-
4 by
I have
3.
been very narrow-minded,
Right.
Fran. Fran corrected me.
Very
It's not
good.
very-
Fran's on
All
the
right.
big picture.
Just wanna make
Every
sure we're
once in a while
talking
that
about the same
happens.
thing.
No, but no, your point was very good. From the diagram, and your diagrams are great, the diagram implies an additional veneer to the section of the steps that are parallel to the sidewalk.
Yes.
That will, I don't know whether or not it will decrease the usable width of the sidewalk, which is probably one of the narrowest sidewalks in the village.
That's right.
Is there any way to make that intrusion, I don't wanna say
Yeah.
intrusion, but is there any way that can be made less thick?
Yeah, I think,
Whole
so
front of it.
if you actually consider the overhang, so the actual, the stairs themselves
Yeah,
and the
treads.
the landing has an overhang, so it actually,
Yes.
they will not come out any further than the existing overhang, which is the furthest extent that it comes out.
Okay, I see that the landing has an overhang.
Yes.
In looking at the steps, they, to my eye from this picture, do not have an overhang.
You mean into the sidewalk?
Toward the side.
Yeah, there isn't one.
Yes, but, okay, sorry, yes.
Smooth.
So I would say that
So they're using 1 inch
We're-
thick brick veneer.
we're not going any further out than the overhang, which is what constricts that,
Okay,
which is what constricts you as you're walking by that
Right.
space, but you are correct that there are no
okay.
overhangs.
As long as you don't make the width of the sidewalk less narrow than it already is.
Yeah.
Well, they'll have to.
If they
put
do,
a-
yeah,
a
if
brick
they're
mix
putting
in.
brick on the face, it's gonna be 1 inch plus
Yeah, plus mesh and
mortar,
all the other
whatever.
stuff, yeah.
So,
But the overhang comes out, the current overhang of the stoop comes out more than an inch.
You mean on the very top?
So it's like when you're looking at a house, you're considering how far the soffit comes out. I mean, you're considering the furthest extent of that piece, and that would be that overhang on top.
Where the landing is
It's
now.
the landing, yes,
The
that
slab
comes out
overhang.
another inch and a half. So the inch veneer will not change the
Okay.
furthest extent of that, which determines, whether you can walk or not. Which determines how much, space you have to pass. Does that make sense?
So I think you have a survey in the package that you submitted,
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
which shows, I think it shows that a small portion of your stoop is currently on your property, and probably 75% of the stoop is on village property.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're talking about. You see that?
Oh, yeah.
Am I reading it correctly?
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
looks like
that's right.
Yep.
Well, that's just how it is on that street.
So how
do
does
you
it
know,
look?
do you know how long that is? The whole, how long is that?
What, the
front of the building? No, the whole stoop.
Oh, it's probably like, let's see, hold on, let me count the bricks.
6, they can count the blocks.
Like 160 inches or something like that, maybe a little more.
10 feet or 11 feet.
160, no, that's more. 120 inches is 10 feet.
Mhm.
I don't know, I'm not good at adding. Just a carpenter.
While I'm at it, I might as well, that rose bush is ours too. Would we possibly be able to purchase just the entire, dimension of the house and driveway in front of, or are you?
So I don't see why not.
Well, we don't sell the sidewalk, do we? in this
No, but
situation?
the same width as the steps,
Yeah,
straight across,
right.
straight across the driveway and everything.
Well, that would make sense, yeah.
So this whole piece here,
Yeah.
just the width of the steps though.
Correct, just the extent of the steps, yeah.
How wide are they
Either
again?
that or we're talking,
They're about 3 feet wide.
we're 3 feet, we're only talking about $400 or $300, that's gonna cost them 1,000. I don't know what it costs for a survey.
What is this width,
It's a lot.
45 feet? Is this 45 feet,
I
that's
think
all?
we should just. Are there any liability issues for us, like if someone, having this stoop there? I guess we have other places in the village that are
Yeah,
like
the
that.
stairs are on our property, or where you walk up is especially.
Everybody stares on that block on our property.
Not our,
It's not-
the village's
yeah.
property.
And I just let them do the steps and that's the other issue.
Kind of, other than that, have we done any other small ones? Like,
Yeah, 66 Main. We did 66 Main across the street, didn't we just sell hers too?
oh, the one down there, Barton and Bird.
Yeah, we did
That's
sell across
very
the street,
small.
66, where, John Star just moved.
Yeah, we did. That's probably, yeah. Okay, well, what do you wanna do?
Are you asking that? Oh.
I can't tell from this, we have to figure out how much is. Or do you wanna sell that whole piece of property all the way across it, and I don't think we should do that. We should keep the control of that sidewalk, although we can't use it for anything, so.
It would seem to me, in looking at the photograph, as Fran points out, this area here this is village,
Right,
this is village, it's
Right.
not usable.
right.
So from here to here,
It looks like all but 1 foot of those steps is in the village property, and it's the foot that's against the front of the building, so,
So sell the area from the corner of the house,
Yeah, from the
so like 3 feet by 25 feet or
not the
whatever,
driveway, not the driveway piece, the other piece.
just where the house ends. Is that what
yeah, I
you're
think
saying?
we're just where the house ends.
That would be ideal.
okay,
Yeah.
and you've got those dimensions, it's right there on the survey, 22.7 feet.
By 3 feet.
Okay,
Right.
okay, yeah, well, we have to also see how, if this is part of his, how much, you know, if we're doing square footage, this is a little section, it's already, so what are we talking there?
It
2
appears,
feet?
yes, it appears as if we're talking 2
2 feet.
feet deep and 22.7 feet wide. Would you agree with that? If we were to say that no, you would?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's 4.5
I don't have
square
my
feet.
glasses on.
We
So we're
can see
talking
it in the feet for me.
$184.
4.5
These
square
up
feet.
here,
Whatever.
legal fees.
Right,
That's,
So it would be using on the survey, using the width of the house
Maybe
is
get him to donate
22.7
something.
feet,
Yes.
and assuming that the lot line is
Were we trying to?
approximately 1 foot,
$4.
approximately 1 foot of your
If
stoop.
we sell it.
181.6, sorry.
There we go.
$181.60.
Okay.
Well, it's at 22.7 times 2 feet.
Yeah, is it,
So four.
I'm a land baron.
Quite a bit.
no, in addition,
45.4.
there's.
With great
legal-
power
legal
comes great
fees.
responsibility, Ron.
Take a guess on this.
I think we should have a survey, we can own it.
In addition, you still need the survey and there's legal fees on both sides to get the real estate done properly.
What we'll need
But then you'll own it, then it won't be our problem again.
what will be necessary from your
Control the sidewalk.
survey is the meets and bounds, which your surveyor should be able to provide. And then if they could also provide the meets and bounds for the stoop, I think that's what we would have. And then there's the question of the cost
Yeah,
of selling. Do we have any idea of what it's cost?
I thought we just came up to, oh, they cost the what?
The legal fees?
No, I have no idea.
No idea.
We can find out real easy for you. If you talk to James Carroll, he'll know, because he just
Well,
did it.
ask Jeff.
Also, or ask Jeff.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll be the same thing.
I'll talk to Jeff Vodopoulos tomorrow morning,
Great.
so he should be able to give you an estimate of what it's cost other people.
So once you buy the property, you don't have to ask us to extend your step.
Okay.
It's all yours.
So,
Just don't extend it onto the
would
village
like to
property.
make a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the Four Stone Street request to add a step to the current stoop. The village board has requested that the owner purchase a portion of village property of 22.7 feet from north to south, and approximately 2 feet from west to east.
I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry that took so long. Okay, let's see. I think we're gonna, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing if there's no other questions or anything from the audience, which is all HDRB members.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You gotta vote. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Is there a roll call on that?
It is.
Vote on the,
Yes,
On the next?
on the resolution.
Which, okay, next. Resolution number 15-2018, adopting local law 02-2018 to amend chapter 64 regulating historic district. Whereas the Village of Cold Spring Board of Trustees has caused to be prepared a draft of the local law to amend chapter 64 of the Village Code regulating the historic district, and whereas the Village of Cold Spring Board of Trustees held a duly noticed public hearing on the draft amended local law on May 1st, 2018, and whereas the Village of Cold Spring Board of Trustees has complied with the requirements of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, as it applies to the adoption of the draft amended local law. Now therefore be it resolved that local law number 2 of 2018 is hereby adopted, and the village clerk is hereby authorized and directed to take all of the actions necessary to complete the local law adoption procedure, including filing said local law with the New York State Office of the Secretary of State. I will make a motion to move the foregoing resolution, which was seconded by,
I second that.
roll call.
Lynn Miller,
yes.
Marie Early,
Yes,
Fran Murphy,
Yes.
Steve Bellotto,
Yes.
Mayor Moretti.
Yes. Resolution was officially adopted, public meeting held on, what is today's date?
May 1st.
May 1st, by a vote of 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you guys for all
Thank you.
your work.
Okay.
One down.
I'm never gonna leave us, they're gonna stay for the
I
rest of us.
know, I should have held them on, head of the captain, literally a captain. Next is a discussion on salaries. I wanted to, with a number of the people that have applied for jobs, it was obvious that, you know, to me, that I think we should raise our base salary, or at least discuss that, and or discuss if someone has, other licenses like CDL or can run heavy equipment operation. I believe Phillipstown and Putnam County both starting pay for CDL licenses over $20. We're starting at 15. There used to be a $2 additional bump and raise if you had your CDL, which we didn't put in the last contract. I have two guys. We just hired, or we will be hiring someone for water and sewer. Who he doesn't have a CDL, but he does have certificates, and you know, which are helpful. You know, certificates in from colleges or for water and sewer. That will be helpful, and getting his license, which will take at least a year or two if he stays with us. But also, there's a person in the wings for highway that has a CDL. We're anticipating one person leaving that is the only person with a CDL. If that happens, then we'll definitely need someone right away. Well, we have actually Bugsy has a CDL also. So it's a great advantage to have the CDL. This person also knows how to, you know, operate heavy equipment or whatever, and the pays that he's been receiving before this, although he's a young guy, were over $20. So in discussing stuff with him, it's, you know, I would like to hire them, but, you know, at $15 an hour, there's no way we're gonna get someone, I think, with the qualifications that, you know, this person.
so would you like to, add back into
Yeah, I think we should.
the $2 CDL?
Yeah,
$2
well, I
an
think
hour?
we should go to $18 for someone that has a CDL license.
So it'd be a $3.
Yeah.
Sorry,
You mean original hire? like at the
Like,
time that they're hired?
yeah, at the time they're hired,
So-
or when they get a CDL.
Okay.
So I'm wondering how that should be phrased. So a new hire comes in at 15, if they have a CDL, they go to 18.
Right.
If somebody's currently working for us at $16
Right.
an hour and gets a CDL, do they go to is your
Yes.
proposed, okay,
Yes.
so it's plus three for CDL.
And I think we should consider that for other licenses as appropriate to whatever, like if he's going into water and sewer and he comes in with some,
Right, but I think what we need to, I agree with you, Fran, what we need to do is be specific about what licenses, are, if you have this license, you get this increase, if you have that
We
license,
should talk
you
to
get
Greg
that.
about that, water department, cause he'll understand what the guy had to go through to get the license and what it's actually worth, you know, to the village. you
Do
know.
you, I know that the guy for water and sewer had I think he had two licenses.
his two.
Well, he has
his
two certificates, he
Two
doesn't have a
certificates,
license yet.
okay.
So, well, we can talk, he's fine with, and we're gonna be hiring him at base pay, but, you know, in the discussion, if we decide on it, or
Yep.
we can actually, you know, narrow it down to what we will give raises for, then we can, you know, I'm sure he'd be happy to receive that, but we should
Now, is there,
kind of identify those.
The certificates.
is the village going to pay for them to get these licenses as well as give them a raise? When I spoke to Greg a while back about hiring someone, maybe to be in line for his job down the road, my recommendation was for if you have someone young and says he's interested in this, I think they should at least pay themselves for the first step license so that we see that they really wanna do this. And then if they, if they get through the first step, then maybe the village can pay after that. Are we going to pay for licensing as well as give them a bump up if they get it?
What does,
Well, that's-
I have no idea what the requirements are to go from the certificate X to certificate Y. If it's time and grade, or if it's X number of hours working on a certain kind of equipment, then the execution of their job would get them to the point where they could qualify.
I know some of it, cause, we talked about this last year when we were talking about Scott. Some of it is actual classroom study, or online study and testing and so on and so forth to get to a certain level. And there are, and I'm sorry, I don't know if you remember the whole conversation, there are probably 3 or 4 levels or more of
Yes,
classroom testing, getting the license.
right, and then you have to
License one,
do
license
actual
two.
field work
Yeah.
also.
So it's gonna be, if we do get someone to the point where they're gonna replace Greg, it's gonna be a couple of years process. And some of it is, I think a lot of it is classroom study.
Haven't we
As
paid
well
for
as-
Greg's schooling on a number of occasions?
Look,
I mean,
I
if
mean,
they're already working
Greg
with us.
has to probably do stuff to keep up his license, and
I
I
would
think,
think he has to be
yeah,
certified
he
or
has to
whatever.
be,
They're recertified.
And I don't know if we paid for Scott, I think Scott was starting a class, I don't know. If
I thought
He has
that
one
we
license.
paid for that,
We probably did. I mean,
or
yeah,
if he took if he had to take time off, I think we paid
maybe,
for him to take the time off,
Yeah.
which I think is a reasonable arrangement. If someone needs to attend a class that's conducted Monday through Friday, then I think that it's reasonable that they receive their regular
Oh,
salary
absolutely.
while they attend the class.
right. If
I
the-
agree with you there. I'm not sure I agree with paying the tuition,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
tuition and materials and stuff like that.
Well, why don't we research what we're doing now, what we
Okay,
have
sorry.
done, and then identify the cost and time for,
Yeah.
to receive whatever certificates you need.
I
And that would be that case.
can talk to Greg about
Cause
the,
I agree, it depends if it's gonna cost like thousands of dollars.
I'll look into the water department stuff,
All right.
cause I have to talk to Greg tomorrow anyway.
Okay, and then if we can identify the cost or whatever, then maybe have a better idea how much we should boost the salary if someone, obviously if they're gonna get a license, it's gonna take a number of years and studies and whatever, and they're not gonna be working for $3 more an hour either. The other is like, with CDLs also, if someone can work heavy equipment, and has experience in that, that maybe should get a bump somehow, so.
Well, on that one, is there any sort of
I don't think
certification?
there is any, not that there's no certification, do you know, Steve?
For what? I'm sorry.
Like, for back heavy equipment?
Uh,
I'm sure you can get something, but I don't think there's
something
anything
that's fine.
required.
yeah, I mean, you can go to school for it, but I don't think anybody who doesn't, you don't need a licensed operator backhoe. You know, like you don't, if you're gonna drive it down the road to move it, you need a licensed driver's license. But if you can own a backhoe and operate it, there's no rule that way. You know, I guess if you worked for the power company and did it, or a utility of some sort, they would have
Yeah.
classes and
Right, right,
certification, but,
right.
but like just Joe average on the street, I don't think they have that.
Okay,
So why don't
If
we
they
start
do, I
with
know a
the
lot of
CDL?
people are in a lot of trouble.
What's that?
Why don't we start off with the
Because
CDL?
they use the machines all the time.
Maybe we can identify some criteria for the operation of heavy equipment.
okay. So, this one person in the wings, if everything happens the way I think it's going to, are we okay with $18 an hour?
If they
I-
have the CDL,
Yes, he has a CDL, and I think he's a person we wanna hire and keep.
Yes.
so I'll work on the employee, employment package, whatever.
Okay,
It's been a year since I've seen it. I
Yeah.
can't remember what it's called.
Employee handbook.
Thank you.
The employee
I'll
handbook.
tell you,
Oh, yes, we're okay with $18.
okay.
Yes.
that seems,
Steve?
yeah, that seems fair. I wish we could pay more. Those are like 1988
The other,
wages.
the other increase that I'd like to do is, right now, Bugsy, I forget what he's making now, but as he took over, took over the highway crew chief, and he's on probation, but he'll be getting the 2% raise, which will bring him to 29.19, this coming month, next month. If we do that, if we agree on that. And then I'd like to just bring it up to even $30 an hour for that position, if everyone's fine with that. And that wouldn't start till 6 months in, so he'll be here for 6 months.
That's when his probation is up.
Yeah, it'll be 6 months from start of the year, our fiscal year, so December
First.
1st.
When was he hired? I don't even remember officially.
I think it was March,
Yeah, it was like a month ago or something.
yeah. So, if everyone's okay with that.
Yeah.
I've discussed all this with Michelle, so.
Yes.
Yeah, as
Now,
long as she's okay with it.
you wanted Lindsay to go at 6 months, he goes to $30 an
Yeah.
hour. Now, it's 6 months, his probation is up prior to December 1st.
Well, probation's a year,
Okay, so rather
or
than,
anything booked before a year, you can do it.
okay, so we're not gonna say 6 months from the start of probation, but December 1st?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And I've talked to him and said, would that be okay? He's agreed, so Michelle's agreed, he's agreed. And if you
Yes.
agree,
Yes.
then. okay.
Yes, he's
Okay.
been doing a fine job,
He is,
better
He
than
sure
fine,
has.
Yes.
yeah.
Except for today when they hit a pipe we repaired. Down on Kemble, there's a drain, a culvert going across
It
under
was
the.
all rusted out anyway.
Yeah, so they were replacing that, but what they hit was a water line they repaired,
that
so.
one.
No.
I didn't see that part.
Oh,
I
no.
missed that part.
It was a joint though, where it was repaired, so they just had to put a new collar
Okay, so
on.
we take away
That's why the water
from
got
the
shut off
$30.
Yes, he learned a lesson.
I was wondering why they shut the water off today, just to fix that
Exactly, yeah, it
drain
was
pipe.
down there, yeah.
I was like,
Okay.
Okay, good. Discussion on Fight Day, I don't know what we're discussing here, I
he
don't
ain't
know.
here,
Okay, so,
Jason,
Yeah, that's
right,
fine.
Jason.
so no discussion.
okay, no discussion. Approve new hire for water and sewer. Do we have that? I don't see that in the packet.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's nice.
You sent it by
Email.
email, the other day, they didn't put it in the package, if you didn't see it.
Maybe it was
do you
on the
wanna-
back
Oh,
or
okay,
something.
do you wanna read the name and,
You want me to read the name, right?
sure, I think it's
Gentleman is
Louis Bacar, no,
Kit, Kitzwager from Beacon. It's Kitzweger.
KITZ,
Weger, it looks like. He's from Beacon.
he's gotta change his name so that we can say it.
Yes, and he has, let me see, previously worked, what do we wanna know?
that's all, I just need his name, I mean, we have
Okay,
the,
yeah, that's all.
He has 2 certificates,
He has 2 certificates, he
Right.
has work experience since 2008 in construction, he actually worked for Legion Fireworks for a while.
He still works well.
Does he?
Yeah.
Mostly in landscaping, if I remember his current work, but he has worked in water and sewer.
Yes, and he has licenses,
Certi-
wastewater operation certificate from SUNY Ulster, electrical.
I mean, that looks very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I interviewed him with Greg and, you know, he's very eager to start and he's willing to start at the bottom. And he said to work his way up. We explained to him that it's not just, you know, gonna be technical work, that there is some grunt work and cleaning up of stuff and painting, and he was fine with everything and understood.
Stuff, that's a good word.
What's that?
Stuff, cleaning up of stuff.
Stuff, yes, cleaning, yes.
And
Many types of
he's gonna
stuff.
start at 15.
And he's agreed to start at 15 an hour.
Okay, great.
So,
Is he interested in continuing
yeah,
licensing?
yeah, he is.
Okay.
But from what Greg said, you have to have a year, and it has to be, since it's water and sewer, you have to have a year for both. So Greg doesn't think this is gonna fall into the time allotted before he retires, so,
It's not very nice.
but, anyway, so, but he can work towards that if he stays with us, and it'll be good to have someone
That'd be good.
licensed.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to hire, Mr. Louis
Kitzweger.
Kitzweger, at the, base pay of $15 per hour for, the water and sewer department.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't hear who seconded, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Today we had some good news.
Yes.
We opened the bids for the firehouse roof, which was supposed to be opened yesterday, but Jeff was the only one here and didn't have a witness, so there were two bids, one from a company in Connecticut and one from a company in Middletown, which Steve had given us their name. He had talked to them, and they put a bid in, and they came in at 85,000 plus. Is the bid in here?
853.
Yeah,
Just the front page of it.
8585.
$85,853. Also, their hourly rates for carpenters and laborers are way less than the Danbury company.
Good old Orange County.
What's that?
They're from Orange County, that's
Yeah, but it's huge. And if it's prevailing wage, it's New York, so I guess they
True.
can add what they want to it.
How much was the Connecticut thing again?
Their hourly rate was, I think they were both 155.
What was their overall bid?
Their overall bid,
30 or
I
something?
can't remember, was 128 or something like that. Can't remember.
Okay.
They were the same company that bid last year, but they raised their thing by like 13,000 this year. Anyway, we're gonna do this, just approve this,
42,000 bucks.
yeah, approve this conditionally. They didn't put references in there, and Fran called today, and they'll be sending those, so I'd like to make a motion to approve, the bid, or to award the bid, for the firehouse roof, to Home Pro Exteriors on the condition that, we receive their, references and, everything.
References check out.
And they check out, however you wanna word that.
They've been in business a long time, I think it'll be okay.
Okay, so,
I'll second that motion, whatever it is you say.
all in favor?
Aye.
And thank you, Steve, it's a big savings, and
Huge,
really,
Steve.
if,
Nice
Really?
work.
Yes.
there, so,
I
thank
just paid my own salary for 7 years, I just figured it out.
you. Great. Lynn,
Okay, I make a motion to approve bill batch number 4591 in the amount of $27,243.11.
I will second that. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just have one thing, I met with, along with Fran, met with, several reps from, Metro North today. We did a walkthrough I think it was 6 months ago. The guy said, the head guy, whose name I don't have here, Mark, I can't remember his last name. And we discussed, a number of issues at the walkthrough. I did this with, Neil Zuckerman, and so Neil and I put together a letter and we sent it to Metro North asking to meet and to go over some of these projects and see if we could work with them, if they would work with us on them and address some of our concerns. So they did come in today. The three sections that we talked about, one was the pedestrian overpass and cleanliness. Cleanliness was one, I guess there was actually four. Cleanliness was one. They did, and from the roads, it looks pretty nice. They finally power washed most of, if not all of, the exterior, which they hadn't done. We did talk to them about the interior. There's supposed to actually be someone here once a day cleaning stuff, like picking up stuff, which we told them that didn't seem like that was happening. But the other was that they power wash or clean the interior. They're supposed to do that once a month. They said if there's a reason or if it gets more traffic than they think or whatever, we can call them. They'll address the issue. So that was the pedestrian walkway or the overpass plus the stair area. The other thing was, one of the things was the roof on the pedestrian overpass has an interior gutters, and then they go down into leaders that are very small. They get clogged, the overflow comes down, and in the winter it freezes, the water comes out, and it's right near the elevator and freezes. So what they're gonna do is they're putting exterior gutters on. This will do two things. One is that it'll drain probably properly. The other problem was that they would have to shut down the tracks in order to get on the roof to do anything.
Which they did on Sunday.
Which they did this
They said,
Sunday,
yeah.
yeah.
On Sunday, they had, 2 cars on the track, 2 work cars on the track with bucket trucks.
Yeah,
You can see them up at the overpass. And today I noticed there is an exterior drain on the west side of the overpass, on the north side of the overpass. So it may be that they addressed both on Sunday.
right. I didn't think they were doing it, they did that yet, but according
It's a light gray in color and it stands out against the black.
along the whole,
No, it's just on the northwest corner of.
going up the stairs.
No, on the, closer to the, Lund Terrace Bridge.
They said they had to close, they worked on it this weekend to at least clear what they had to clear.
Anyway, what they did was they installed a fall, like a cable going from tower to tower so they could work up there, and they're gonna put an access inside the walkway so they can go up onto the roof without having to shut down the tracks. And this is, I asked them, is this just kind of what they would like to do, and he said, and they have it scheduled to do it, so they're gonna be doing that this year.
Nice.
So they're putting a new roof on and doing the gutters and an access to the roof, so that should, and then the cleaning part, they did do the exterior, so I think if we just, keep talking to them or keep contact with them, I think they'll,
What about paving? I mean,
okay,
due to their parking,
We'll get into that.
coming up.
yeah, okay. Sorry, I jumped ahead.
You did.
I have the piece on there.
So the next was the Market Street and the paving, were included in the pump station project is paving our area or the area around that. But the rest of the area is ours coming down Market Street, and then it kind of angles off in this strange little dimension. But most of that property is ours, unfortunately. I brought up to them that most of the traffic, or all, 90% of the traffic is commuters, and it's not really the villages, although we own it. They were very unsympathetic about that and compared our budget with theirs and how it's tight, so, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, I try not to laugh,
I know, it's really hard not
Such
to
a
laugh
crock.
at that one,
Honestly.
because we said, we have a really tight budget and we can't, whatever. And we were hoping that you would help us with this, and they
But they did understand that the massive amount of traffic
yes.
They
that's
said
there
it's
is due to their
open on
train
weekends
track.
too, they said.
Yeah, they
so-
gave us, and don't they use it for other things? It was really bad.
There's 2 houses
But
down
they,
there,
So, it's planned that we're supposed to expand, we're gonna do the area that's already included. Greg has talked to the contractors about expanding, going up, Market Street another 178 feet, I think. But we'd be responsible for that. They did agree to do their piece that's kind of connected with all that, so at the same time, and coordinate with them, so that at least going down Market Street on that whole section will be one. If you go down there now, it's kind of chopped up a bit.
Yeah.
So it'll all be, hopefully one company that does everything, and it'll be one surface and no joints. Final was the bridge. So we were going to, Bugsy was gonna do just like kind of the entrance on each side of the bridge, the vehicular bridge you were talking about now, or trestle, whatever you wanna call it. And then talking to their engineer there, he had some, he'd like us to do, he said there was a way to do that to actually stop water infiltration, and that if we should mill it down to the concrete. This is our responsibility, the top section, the concrete section of the road. They're responsible for the steel support down. We're responsible for steel up, which is the concrete deck plus the paving. The railing or whatever you wanna call it on there, what do they call that? Anyway, the steel railing or their goods on there, guard is their responsibility. So he said what they would like to do, they're gonna be taking out, there's a lot of chips and stuff falling from the concrete. They said that's how they used to do the work, now they used to encase the steel. What they're gonna do, and this is planned and it's gonna happen this year, is take the concrete off of the steel, paint all of the steel, so that there's no loose concrete down there anymore. And then to stop it water infiltration, which would be, our responsibility, they recommended that we take the, mill down the macadam down to the concrete, see if the concrete's sound, patch that if it's needed, and then put a membrane down in a heavier duty, what they call it super pave, an asphalt, for bridges or that type of traffic, and also an expansion joint, where the road meets the bridges.
Which they said is there someplace, but we probably cemented over years ago.
Do they test the structural integrity of that bridge? Cause it's an oldie.
They do that, I think every year, and then they rate it like 1 to 5, and the rating, if you're looking at it, you're saying, shouldn't you replace that? Because it's like 4s, and so this is how they're addressing it. But structurally, they say it's fine, and they have to do something.
But it is their bridge, they built it so
Yeah.
they wouldn't have a railroad crossing there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. It seems like that, and
There was a New York State
It's gotta be
website that lists all
expensive to take, to
bridges,
mill it down to the
which is
concrete.
structurally.
What's that?
It's gotta be expensive
It's
to mill it
riveted
down to the
together.
concrete.
I don't think it's that expensive.
Pretty
I
heavy.
mean,
Normally you
No, no,
don't
I
mill
won't.
it down to the concrete.
No, but it's only a couple of
60
inches.
is the youngest.
Yeah,
They
definitely.
probably blacktopped it a couple of times.
Well, it's not, I don't think it's that. And I measured it today, I think it's 120, or something, I forget what it is. But anyway, we're gonna probably we'll get a quote. We're gonna have to put it out to bid and get quotes for it. We have CHIP money, so we can use that. And that's all.
Instead of Fishkill?
What's that?
Instead of Fishkill Avenue? Instead of Fishkill Avenue?
Oh, I don't know what we're gonna do with Fishkill Avenue. I think we need to,
He was offering CHIPS money today, and I'm like,
what's that?
well, we should have new CHIPS money coming in.
Great,
I would
yeah.
assume around the same as last.
I don't think we'll have enough to do Fishkill Avenue regardless.
I think they should do it all. They should
That
fix-
will, because
Since
they,
it's their bridge,
I agree.
we should put all the villagers down on the tracks, stop the trains, and say, listen, until you fix this bridge.
Fix the bridge.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you go stand on the tracks, we'll find some
Wait for you on
people.
top.
All right.
We'll wave.
It just seems extremely unfair.
I agree.
I can't believe that they just dictate like that.
You don't, it's
New York State law is what they said.
it's our responsibility.
That's what he said, but it's,
They say it's New York State law.
But the reason for the bridge
the
is
bridge
because of the
that they
tracks.
built was because of the tracks,
In the
and
good
the
old
traffic
days.
is because of the tracks,
You got to
so.
know, in the good old days, you used to
the-
drive across, we had
Those were-
And they got
that was
money.
Before my good old
before your
days.
time, sorry, was way before my time.
I don't know.
All right. Anything else from anyone? We are working on the 4th of July. We sent out letters today, invites to everyone. We have a ways to go on that, so we're meeting Thursday at 7:30, this Thursday. I think we'll go over more stuff there. Was there anything else? I guess that's about it. Anything from the,
I just have a question on the track thing.
You wanna join
Steve's
Steve?
really right, and I'm sort of wondering if villagers ought to be sort of rallied to write letters to the MTA,
Yeah.
because it's coming out of our pockets, and it is their bridge.
They're basically saying New York State law says
So let them demonstrate it, and
that they own the bottom part and we own everything above, whatever the framing is.
It's a nice deal they got from the state.
it's a nice deal they got from the state, but
But their budget is so tight
not so
that
great for us.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just wondering if
Well, they
public
can't
pressure
afford
with
all
the
the safety
MTA would,
features they're supposed to have by law either. They're
I
not
wonder if
putting
public
those in.
pressure on the MTA would at least if we could mitigate some of the cost, if we could reduce some of the cost and maybe, I don't know,
That's
it seems
what
like it's
we're,
worth a try.
that's what we're hoping today, and that kind of,
But does that guy?
but I think more, I don't think if we didn't write that letter, and if we didn't meet with them down there, I don't think they would have done anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we got some,
honestly,
We're on their radar now.
we got some of the cleaning up a bit, you know.
Do they want anything from us, like that we have to be nice and grand
Firstborn
to
or
them?
something?
No, I just mean like, is there any, we have no bargaining
No.
chip or power or anything.
No.
Okay.
I mean, the paving going down Market Street is 90%. It's not Cold Spring commuters, so I don't
I
think
think
they use it.
as Beacon keeps growing, the trains are gonna be going to more crowded coming in here, then we kind of really scream. Cause if the trains come in here crowded and we don't get seats, that'll be an issue.
Right, anything else? Motion to adjourn,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who'd you get for that,
Oi.
Michael?
I'm sorry?
Who'd you get for the second? Lynn, thank you.
Well, he doesn't even have to look.
You can tell by the voice.
Their meeting Thursday is here,
The Independence
Fourth of
Day?
July, yeah.
7:30.
7:30.
What's the name of the